especially the court system, can get you drawn into the conflict, this desire to win, the desire to make right. Your attorney might even say, well, you can go after this, and you should do this, and you'll win. And, at the end of the day, there is no winning. And just if you remind yourself of that sometimes it's okay to let the other side win. If it meant that you could spend an extra set of weeks with your kids, right? Just in presence rather than in the court system.
Welcome to Startup Dad, the podcast where we dive deep into the lives of dads who are also leaders in the world of startups and business. I'm your host, Adam Fishman. Parenting can be hard enough, but navigating divorce and separation, then co-parenting, is something people usually don't want to discuss. To talk about life as a co-parent, I sat down with Saul Kennedy. Saul is the founder of BestInterest, a product he's built to help co-parents navigate the messiness of that relationship. He was inspired by his own challenges with co-parenting. Saul is a serial founder who has built and sold multiple companies. He's also been a head of product at Dropcam, a product manager at Google, and an angel investor in companies like Coinbase, Gitlab, and Instacart. In addition to being a serial entrepreneur, he's also a single, half-time dad of 2 kids and a co-parent. In our conversation, we spoke about navigating divorce and co-parenting, important lessons that Saul has learned from that experience, the emotional roller coaster of half-time parenting as a single dad, and his experience taking time off to be a full-time dad when his daughter was very young. Saul shared a mistake he made as a parent and how that experience has helped him grow into the dad he is today. I hope you enjoy today's conversation with Saul Kennedy. Welcome, Saul Kennedy, to Startup Dad. Saul, it's a pleasure having you here with me today. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Adam. It's great to be here.
So for folks who don't know much about you professionally, we're obviously going to get into your parenting journey, but tell me a little bit about you and what you do for work and what you've been doing for the last couple of decades.
Yeah, I've always been an entrepreneur, and that's how I identify as I start companies. And I started my first company when I was 15, kind of did that whole thing. And I've always been attracted to creating software. So my first app was a pop-up on your Windows or Mac computer way back in the old days on startup, and it would be an inspirational message that would pop up. And that's my career, is I love starting companies. I love starting from scratch, learning how to do it all myself, and then growing a team out of that. And so, yeah, that's what's brought me to today, being a dad and also running BestInterest.
Cool. I can't wait to talk about BestInterest. This is going to be really, really fun and a unique conversation we've never had on the show before. So tell me about your family now. You are a single dad.
I am. Yeah, I have 2 kids. They're 6 and 8. Great little kiddos. We live in Northern California. And yeah, I am a half-time dad. So I have joint custody with their mother, and I have them half the time. And typically during the weeks, we split it 2-2-5, which means they're kind of shifting back and forth during the week. And then in the summertime, we do week on, week off. That's how we split up the custody. And I have a wonderful partner, Louise, who's really actively involved in the kids and helping out. And yeah, that's the family.
How old were your kids when you went through the divorce process? And tell me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah. So the process of our marriage unraveling started pre-COVID. And fortunately, in hindsight, actually, a week before the lockdowns of COVID was when we decided to separate. And it was definitely a challenging time to be shifting from being married to then being single and not being able to meet anyone, not really being able to socialize, having lockdowns, negotiating. How do you manage kids when there are lockdowns, that sort of thing? It was definitely an intense time to be learning the ropes of co-parenting.
Yeah. And your kids were, pretty young then, right? Like if I'm thinking about back like 5 years ago, they were like 1 or 2 and
1.5 and 3.5.
Yeah. So how do you have that conversation with kids at that age? Like they understand so little, it would seem. So I'm curious, like, what is that like? How do you approach that with like really little kids? Or how did
Yeah.
you, I guess?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And yeah, I don't have all the answers for sure. But what's interesting when they're getting started on this journey themselves so young, it just becomes their normal, and
Yeah.
we kept it really simple. Daddy's getting a new house, mommy's getting a new house, and we're moving, and then we're going to each have houses, and you're going to go back. It was very simple. And it just, like I said, it became their normal. And these kids are so flexible. I think divorce is hard on kids for sure. But in the case of our kids, they're like very just okay with this dynamic. They don't complain about it, and they just have their systems. And what's also really interesting is that their relationship is even closer than they are with each of their parents, because they're always spending time together, transitioning. And I really love that there are such good buddies in this process.
Yeah, that's sort of interesting that the only constant for them is each other. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wild.
Yeah, it really is. So you went through this divorce process and now you're co-parenting. And you mentioned to me that co-parenting, and the reason you've built this company, Best Interest, co-parenting has been more challenging even than the divorce process. So tell me a little bit about that, and what have you learned in navigating this process so far?
Yeah, I never thought that I would get divorced. I don't think anyone ever does, of course. And facing the idea of divorce and co-parenting, I was really terrified, about starting over. And the divorce process, actually, in hindsight, and now knowing what I know about what other people go through, ours was pretty simple. Like you mentioned, it was fairly straightforward. We mediated most of it. And so I have a lot, I thank us both for being able to take the high road in that situation. Afterwards, though, the co-parenting was the most challenging thing for us. And what ended up happening was that I noticed we were just constantly getting engaged with one another, especially around communication. This was actually when I started getting back into dating. My first girlfriend at the time made just this nice, gentle acknowledgement and observation that I was texting my ex a lot. And I, at that time, thought that was normal, to be texting 5 to 10 to 15 times a day. And then I realized, actually, that's not the right way. It's not the right way to move on. There's a certain amount of communication that's necessary, obviously, as a co-parent, and there's some that isn't. And a lot of times the messages were taking me out of the process of being a dad, being present with my kids, and also moving on with my life. And so that became the spark, as you mentioned, of the business that I'm building now, which is helping co-parents communicate with one another.
Yeah. And you described to me just this sort of adversarial system that exists. Tell me what you meant by that.
Well, yeah. So the family court system, I'm not a big fan of it. As a co-parent, I have experienced what I would describe as the underbelly of the family court system, where a very, very simple matter became incredibly complex. I was on the stand for many hours in a situation that really could have just been solved with a simple conversation. And in the family court system, it's rooted in the court systems of this country, and that there are winners and losers, and there's good and bad, and we have to assign blame, and we have to decide who is right. And, when it comes to families and kids, honestly, there are no winners in this type of battle. And so I ended up walking away having won the decision, but feeling like I had lost, because it was such a time-consuming and awful process for everybody. And so some of the impetus and the desire and the prayer of my current company is that we can save other co-parents from going down that path and ending up in the arms of the family court system, which I don't think always protects people.
Yeah. Oh, I hadn't even thought about that, we have this system that's really designed for punishment, and we're trying to figure out something that's supposed to be equitable and it's partnership even in separation. And so that's really challenging.
Yeah. And there are no criminals here, right? We're all trying to do the best we can. We're all trying to be the best parents we know how to be. And, really at the end of the day, a system like this takes people away from their kids.
Yeah.
And in the court system, you hear the term best interest, always referring to what is in the best interest of the kids. And so when I was coming up with the name for my business, I thought, oh, that would be a pretty good name to remind people that it's really about the kids.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. I was wondering how you came up with that name. That's good. If you had like one piece of advice, having navigated the court system and just generally with co-parenting kind of broadly, what would you tell someone who's like going into this journey themselves?
Learning how to take the high road and also specifically learning how to drop the rope. And I'm not always the best at this, but especially the court system can get you drawn into the conflict, this desire to win, the desire to make right. Your attorney might even say, well, you can go after this, and you should do this, and you'll win. And, at the end of the day, there is no winning. And just if you remind yourself of that sometimes it's okay to let the other side win. If it meant that you could spend an extra set of weeks with your kids, right? Just in presence rather than in the court system.
Yeah.
So I think that is the key, is just learning how to not win and to just allow and accept and move on.
It sounds like just not even getting into the battle that the court system or the lawyers want you to have is a good piece of advice too.
Oh, totally. And, that's just really what I believe Best Interest's purpose is that for me, it started with communication breakdowns and, blaming each other and getting defensive. And then, 30 texts later, you're up in arms, right? And that's not helpful for anyone. But learning how to communicate effectively with one another to ensure that your message gets across, that conflicts are de-escalated, that can really help. Because in a co-parenting dynamic, it's such a weird relationship. If you've never been a co-parent, you don't really know how uniquely challenging this is. Here is this person that you literally decided you don't want to be in a relationship with any longer for whatever reason. There might have been something really traumatic too in that. There might even have been emotional abuse or whatnot. And yet now you're forced into a relationship with them that isn't any better. You both are the same people. And now you're having to navigate and make really important decisions, highly emotional decisions with one another. It's one of the most challenging human relationships that I think anyone can have.
Yeah. Wow. That framing is really interesting. You've knowingly decided that we don't want to spend time together anymore. And yet you have to, right?
Yeah.
You have to negotiate and navigate all this stuff. That's challenging. So you're a single dad, half-time parent. Tell me about that experience. What kind of feelings, what's that like?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. It's a unique thing to be a half-time parent. You have this experience, or I have this experience of when I'm with my kids, especially when it's just me and it's 2-on-1, honestly, that can be really challenging. The ages my kids are, it's getting a little bit better, but man, there's so many demands and it's overwhelming at times. And so a lot of times I have this feeling like, oh, I need a breather. I need a break. I need some adult stimulation. Especially during COVID, it's like, where are my adults? I'm surrounded by kids and gosh, I need a break. And then you get your break and you're like, oh man, I really miss my kids. Oh, this is awful. I can't see them. I can't talk to them. I have to pretend like they don't exist in a way. That's hard. It's weird to go from this. It's like a black and white kind of experience of, okay, now you're single, you're back to hanging out with adults. Oh, no, you're back to being a dad, and back and forth. Oh, the kids are sick. Now the schedule's adjusted,
Yeah.
So it can be really challenging. It can be really lonely to be doing that. Post-COVID, obviously it's changing, but we live in a culture that we're not tribal. We're all living in our own homes and we're all doing the parenthood thing pretty much solo unless we're making extra effort to get everyone together and do play dates. So it can be pretty isolating to have kids.
Yeah, that what you described is like a roller coaster ride of like, I'm on, oh, I'm off, I'm off, I'm off, I'm on, I'm off. What a wild feeling.
Yeah, there's like a splitting that happens too, where like I almost feel myself putting on the daddy cap when it's like that day. I know that they're going to come and my personality shifts subtly, probably even hormones get ready, like I'm ready to get in my daddy mode from being a single guy.
Yeah. The thing too that you mentioned is, 6 and 8, it's not newborns. So, you're not changing diapers and things like that. But 6 and 8-year-olds, and I think you have 2 boys, right?
No, girl and a boy.
A girl and a boy. Okay.
Yeah.
But still, that age, you have to be on all the time when they're around. Like they want to do stuff, which is amazing. I hear stories about like the teenage years when they don't want to see you at all. But it's also like, I think it's okay to also admit like it's also exhausting.
Oh, yeah. I want to admit those sorts of things because, I know it's not normal to, like a lot of people won't admit to being bored when they're around their kids. But honestly, it can be really, boring to keep playing the same game over and over again. That can be really hard. 6 and 8 is a unique time where, especially my 8-year-old, she's starting to be a lot more independent, and like, she dresses herself now, and that's been a while, but she'll get up on her own. She'll come in on her own. Like there's kind of this independence. She'll be doing her art projects. She's a great artist and she has her own life that's developing. Whereas my son, he's still very much in like, he wakes up, he comes to me. He wants to play a game. He's like dictating what we're going to do next. And as his dad, I'm learning, well, how do I set boundaries with him so that I ensure that I have my own time? And there's also this guilt of being a co-parent, knowing that, well, actually, I will be getting my own time because you're going back to your mom's today. So then I feel guilty even setting those boundaries. So that's also an interesting aspect of being a co-parent is how do you maintain those boundaries with your kids?
So it's hard enough to maintain boundaries with a 6-year-old, and then he doesn't get to see you all the time. And so it's probably like very intensely like, I want to do all the things with you right now. Have you developed any strategies for that or stumbled through figuring this out?
Stumbled through is a great way to put it. I think, in terms of being a dad, I'd like to just be really calm with them. And I'm generally a pretty grounded guy. That's just the way I show up in life. And that extends to my kids. And, sometimes you have this experience as a co-parent that sometimes the other house is a black box. You don't really know what's going on per se, depending on the communication level. And then they just arrive and then they're just filled with energy. And you hear a lot about like, oh, they come back so crazy from their dad's house or their mom's house and what's going on over there. Sometimes the kids are just really excited, they're really excited to see you again and that's the way they're expressing their excitement is by being absolutely bonkers. And so for me, it's about creating those rituals. So I do a little ritual with them when they come back home where, it's a little woo-woo, but I'm a kind of a woo guy. We do a little ritual where we gather and they each pick out a crystal, an object from the room, and we get together and we just talk a little bit about what happened and, what we're going to do the rest of that week. And it's a way to just kind of ground into each other, welcome them back, and then, say, you're here now. I think that's important to have that ritual so they are able to like say, okay, we're here now. We're all together.
It sounds a little bit like the circle time that they do in school to kind of set their intentions for the day and like talk about what are we going to do today? You're doing it, what are we going to do this week or what are you going to do while you're here? But that seems to work pretty well in school. So
totally. Yeah, that's a very similar approach. And I also just, when it comes to being with them, I just really like to be patient. They might be going through a lot that I'm not even aware of, right? And so it's about being patient with them and taking things slow and just listening to what they want to do and just being there with them. that is one of the benefits of being a co-parent, is that I do have the benefit of being able to be a little bit more on, because I've had sometimes a week off where I've been able to, really focus on me time and renewing myself. And then I can show up with my full energy and I'm not so worn down. So that is another benefit of being co-parent. I wish that more married couples would give each other time off. I think that would be very beneficial to marriage, to allow each individual to remain independent from their kids sometimes, because it can be a slog when it's the two of you all the time with the kids all the time.
Yeah. I am curious, you were in the fairly fortunate position of being able to take some time off to be a full-time dad for a period of time.
Yeah.
And then you went back and started a company, which is like the polar opposite. So I'm curious about both ends of that spectrum. Why did you decide to be a full-time dad? Or maybe that decision was made for you. And then, what made you take the leap back into company building?
Gosh, the company building first, just to say, it's a bit of a compulsion, and we'll return to that, right? Just to be honest here. But the taking the time off, the way that my career had gone, I've always been a small startup guy. That's what I really like doing. It's the most fun for me, being able to put out the fires and put on the hats and not really worry about politics and stuff. Well, I ended up through an acquisition and then another acquisition at a big company at Google. And I thought going into it, this is my dream. I'm at a big company, great healthcare. And sure enough, great healthcare meant kids and all that. It felt like the right time. But I really didn't like the job. It wasn't my cup of tea. It was very political, as a lot of companies are. No dissing Google. They're a great company. But it was difficult for me to be in that environment. I was not being an entrepreneur in that moment in my career. And I've always known that I wanted to be a dad. Always. Since I was a kid, I just had that dad vibe, just always had that. So when I knew I wanted and I was ready to be a dad, I knew I wanted to jump in and have that experience and just do it wholeheartedly, like I do all my other projects, make that my startup, basically, was the idea. Yeah. So I decided to quit my job after my daughter was born, 8.5 years ago now. And I thought that was going to be maybe a year sabbatical, and I was going to get back, get re-inspired. And that inspiration didn't come. I was so focused on being a dad. That was my inspiration. And honestly, very overwhelming being a full-time dad. I developed some very good empathy towards people that choose to do this, towards my mom who did this for my whole childhood. It's a lot of work. It's very demanding. And yet I wouldn't take it back. All the memories that I had just being with her during the day and having that connection of being able to see her wake up in all of her stages of development. It was so beautiful to have experienced that. And I didn't expect that would become another kid and then divorce and then co-parenting, as it went. And that became its own midlife crisis. And then through that process of co-parenting and seeing the challenges there, feeling so challenged myself, also knowing that deep down, I'm a technologist. I love technology. I love building. And knowing that I was a little rusty, from all those years of just being a dad, I decided, though, that it was my duty to wipe off the dust and get back in there and solve this problem with software.
Yeah. And you did I don't want to say the classic thing that founders do, but you did the thing where you're like, I am experiencing this problem myself. I know that probably plenty of other people are experiencing this problem. I'm going to build something that helps people alleviate this problem.
Totally. And, I would say I have not ever had quite this experience of feeling so mission driven. To me, this feels like I found a vocation. I really want to help co-parents in these situations cope and find peace. It's through my core. I've done startups before and I felt really good about what I built, but this is the first time where I saw a need, I heard what people needed, and then I built it, and I feel so inspired every day to wake up and keep building for them.
Yeah, and the mission here, like these are like very real human problems that you're solving, like, and you live through it. And so it almost feels like more meaningful as a result, maybe.
And Adam, too, I would say that for me, it was a hidden problem. Before I became a co-parent, I had no idea. In fact, honestly, I think a lot of people who are married don't want to even think about divorce, right? They don't want to even talk to divorced people or interact with them because they don't want to admit that could be a possibility. And so what I am trying to do with this company is say, hey, you know what? Like, this is a real problem that people are facing. This is a really difficult relationship, and there are not a lot of good solutions out there. And so, yeah, I'm jumping in and helping bring light to what can be a really dark and lonely situation for a lot of people.
So this is a little bit of a funny question here, but have you onboarded your own family onto BestInterest, or is that like a bridge too far?
I'm going to keep that one a trade secret.
Okay. I can only imagine how that conversation would go. So we'll just move on. What are some of the most surprising things that you've discovered as a dad?
Oh, wow. What a good question. I think the first one is just how challenging it is. I think everyone on some level walks into it thinking, oh, I'll be great. I'll do it better. And then you become a dad and you realize, oh man, this is bringing up a lot of shit. Oh, wow. Like, so the things that I didn't heal from my childhood at this age are going to start coming up. It's almost a magical portal of healing being a dad, especially when you're really open towards and oriented towards personal growth and healing. It can be such a rich and challenging experience to become a dad. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, one of the things I didn't anticipate was the loneliness that it is being a parent, let alone a co-parenting parent. And I really love advocating for a shift in the way that we look at parenting and co-parenting towards more of a tribe and more of a community, bringing more people together to help out. I think kids benefit when grandparents participate, friends participate, other people, neighbors, right? When they can look up to multiple adults and they're not just relying on one parent for all of their attention, I think that is really beneficial.
I had someone else on the show who said one of the most isolating places on the planet is being a dad on the playground with your kids, because you're often the only dad there, or, you're, especially if it's during the work week,
Oh
So,
my God.
Anyways,
Yes.
that resonated with me, what you just said about the like kind of loneliness and the isolation.
I'll echo that. Yeah. I think especially early on when my kids are really young and, going out to the playground specifically, it was challenging as a dad because there's this really weird subtext in our culture about men and children and relationships and like questioning and doubting. And it's so problematic because the dads I know are really good dads and they just want to help and they want to be involved, and the kids benefit from their involvement. And I've noticed that over the years, as a dad who shows up, field trips, other places where other kids are, they gravitate towards me, probably because their dad probably is working or not as involved, right? Like they feel that energy and they're like, oh, kids just really, they want to have an involved dad. They want to have an involved mom. They want to be part of that.
Yeah. You mentioned a minute or so ago about, having kids brings up a whole bunch of stuff about your relationship with your own parents and things like that. I can certainly appreciate that myself. But I think one of the things you also mentioned to me is that your kids helped you heal relationships with your parents. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I mean, you talk about it like past tense, and I would say that it's an ongoing process. It brings up a lot, and I don't know what this life is all about. Still trying to figure it out. Probably will never figure it out. But one of the orientations that I have now that I didn't when I was younger is that I believe that life is about growth. I think that, we've come here on a journey and we're learning things, and we're learning things about ourselves, and we're trying to get stronger and better, and we're navigating relationships. I know one of the themes in my life has been how to unravel my own codependency and stick up for myself more, to shine my light brighter, to be more visible. I was a very shy kid and, very codependent. I'm still unraveling codependency. And my kids have really helped me, because the one thing that having kids does is it does force you into connection with your parents, because they want to be involved and they're great with the kids. They might have been really challenging parents, not saying anything about mine, but they might have been really challenging, but they want to be great grandparents. And usually for whatever reason, that's how it works out. They're great grandparents. And so you want them to be around. You need the help. And so they create this kind of forced bond where anything that's unresolved in that relationship between you and your parents is being brought to light, and you're having to work on that so that it's not constantly triggering you. It's wild how that works.
Yeah, I've had some other conversations with folks where they're like, my own parents when I was a kid, they were okay. But like, wow, as grandparents, they're like off the charts. Like, what clicks, when they become grandparents. So I don't want to say that that's your lived experience, but it sounds like you got some great grandparents now. So,
oh, they are the best. They are so into that position. And it's such a sacred position, like being able to jump in, relieve the parent for a little bit, and just provide a very different experience for the kids, just being super present. As a parent, you're filled with all these other obligations and things on your mind and things you got to do in your work. And especially as a startup dad, man, there's a lot going on up there, but they don't have that, right? So they're able to just be really present and just get down on the floor with them and just be with them. And that's such a beautiful gift that they can give to their grandkids.
Yeah. So you have now an 8 and a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And I want to get in the time machine for a second and go back to, before your oldest was born, right before you had your first kid, and you bump into younger Saul in the time machine, which I think is actually not allowed based on the laws of physics, but let's say you do. What would you tell your younger self about being a dad? What advice would you give yourself?
Are you sure about this? I mean, I would never take back becoming a dad, but I think that it's important to not take it for granted as something that everyone has to do, or it's something that you got to tick the box and it changes your life. Like becoming a dad, it is a new chapter. No matter what you do, like your focus changes. For me, it was pronounced because I decided to become a full-time dad, right? So like that, it's even different than having a career and also being a dad. But even when you're still employed, like you suddenly realize, oh, it's not about me anymore. Like biologically or whatever, you start being much more oriented towards their life, what they're up to, and realizing that if it really came down to it, you would absolutely protect them and allow your life to be taken so that they could, like, that just becomes almost overnight. And that shift is such a big shift in the way you view the world. And so would I say don't do it? No, but just like, it's a big deal. It's an important decision, and just make sure you think it through.
Yeah. Appreciate the gravity of the situation for all of its, challenges and opportunities and excitement, but appreciate it.
Totally. Yeah.
What about in the transition from 1 to 2 kids? Like, what have you learned as a dad? What would you tell yourself about maybe what you do differently with your oldest kid than, you did?
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a few things. I think going from 1 to 2 in terms of like daddy responsibility, it's not 2x. It's like 20x. Like it's ridiculous. It just becomes so much harder. But also, one of the things that it taught me was that just don't sweat the small stuff. I look now at products that are sold to first-time parents, and I'm like, oh, that's awful. Like you see those baby cameras that are attached to the bassinet, and it's like $2,000, and you're going to use it for 3 months, and yet it's being sold like hotcakes because they're selling to the fear. And when you're a first-time parent, especially when you hold your child for the first time and you look in their eyes, you're like, oh my, this is important. And you're ready to buy anything. And also, I remember just being terrified at every noise. It was crazy. Like her breathing, I thought there must be something wrong. There must be, we have to call the doctor. Like I was so hyper focused. And common experience. By the time my son was born, like I had been through the ringer, I'd known that everything is totally okay. Kids are very resilient. They're built like a tank. It's fine. They're going to survive through pretty much anything.
Yeah.
And so for him, like obviously that was a lot easier, and I didn't buy all that crap that you don't need.
Yeah. You said two things there that I really appreciate. One is the loud breathing is a sign of imminent death. And I just remember when my oldest is also a girl, just like the noises that babies make when they're sleeping, they're like grunting and they're totally fine. It's just very normal, but they're not quiet. They're like, what I would imagine like an 80-year-old man is making the noises of in his sleep. So that's one. And then the idea that, the kids are going to be okay. I always tell people like, kids are pretty much made of rubber, they'll be fine.
Totally fine. Yeah. And second, kids get a different treatment because of that. There's, I think, a lot more flexibility that they're given. There's maybe even less expectations. You're kind of, in some ways, over all of that stuff. And it's good and it's bad. It's just a different experience.
Yeah. So you talked about, life being about growth, personal growth and learning. And I'm curious if you've developed any frameworks or guardrails for parenting, or like how you've grown in thinking through what it means to be a dad.
Yeah, a lot of parents, when they approach parenting, they do the goo-goos and gagas, and they I've always wanted to treat my kids with the same level of respect as if they were adults, right? I think that we talk down to our kids sometimes, thinking that maybe they don't understand or they're not ready. And I'm not necessarily saying like use big words and be eloquent, but I just really want to respect them and respect their personhood in the same way that I would with an adult, if that makes sense. And, in addition to that, I tend to like allowing them to do it on their own when I can, and to even give them responsibilities that are way above their pay grade, because I think that's really fun. I'm not afraid of giving my kids a hammer or a power drill. I figure if there's really a problem, then, we can take care of it. And I watch them closely. But I think I just love seeing the eyes of my daughter light up when she knows that she can hold the drill that daddy uses to build something. I think that it just gives her like this added weight and responsibility and like feeling of freedom.
My kids are amazed by power tools. That's really a thing fun. I've learned. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't always been a builder, actually. That was something that evolved after my daughter was born. I was always a coder and sat behind my computer. And I had this experience actually one day of wanting to get a garden bed. We were living in San Francisco at the time, so the idea of having a garden was like this exotic, crazy idea. And so I went down to Home Depot and I said, do you have any garden beds? And I said, oh, it looks like they're sold out, right? So he said, oh, well, it's just wood. And I'm like, it's just wood. Like I could build it myself. There was something that clicked that I didn't realize I didn't have to buy it from a kit.
Yeah.
I could just build it. And so I have since then built a lot of really great things. I love working with my hands. I've developed quite a tool collection, and I love passing that down to my kids, knowing that they can build it themselves. They can repair it themselves. We love repairing things instead of buying new things. That's a big thing around here. I like teaching them that stuff.
Yeah. And also very empowering for them to feel like I can do this. It's just wood.
It's just wood. Yeah, let's build it ourselves. Let's empower ourselves. I think in this culture, we have this outsourcing mentality where everything is assigned to a professional to do. You can't really do a lot yourself these days because it's a professional's job to do it. And I think that's actually a really big disservice. As we're facing a very uncertain future, I want my kids to know how to build things. I want them to be helpful members of their community. And I want them to be able to operate independently, run their own house and, fix things around the house without needing to employ someone for everything.
Yeah. Speaking of building, you have built a lot of technology products in your life. Your entire career has been building things, like starting companies and building products. Your kids are getting to the age where, and society is getting to the place where like technology is deeply ingrained in our lives. And I'm curious what you want your kids' relationship with technology to be as they're getting older.
We're watching the airplane being built while we're flying in it, right? And I think this AI change is so much bigger than we really can fully grasp because we're in the soup. And so I definitely have my mind on that when I'm seeing what they're learning in school. Obviously, the public school system is not adapting very quickly to this. Education in general is not adapting very quickly to this. And I'm really uncertain what the future is going to look like for them. When they are old enough to get a job, will there be jobs, right? What will the jobs look like? How are we going to define what productive work is? Is it going to be just being really good at managing a bunch of AI agents? Maybe. I think that there's a lot of let's wait and see, and let's just find out what happens. My daughter is an amazing artist, and we did this great thing with the new ChatGPT. I don't even know if there's a brand on it.
Oh, the new
cartoon tool.
Yeah,
the new image generator.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, such an amazing tool. I was a Midjourney guy for a long time, and this is just miles beyond. So what we did is she's super creative. She's just started drawing these amazing animal cups. I think could be a product, absolutely. And she draws them, and she's like, we'll get requests on Facebook, and she draws on requests, and it's really fun. I thought, what if we popped this image that she drew into ChatGPT and asked, make it real, right? And sure enough, it made this amazing plastic in a real cafe. And it was so, I could tell it was so inspiring to her to be able to see the reality of what she's making. And I can see that as being something that will be very helpful in the future, as the humans being the spark of the inspiration that leads to the product, right? That it's all about ideation, individual creation. And so for me, when I'm thinking about that future, I really hope and would love to inspire my kids to be entrepreneurs themselves and to be thinking about what they want to put into the world, the reasons why, how to come up with a good idea, how to be a self-starter. And also, honestly, I think being an artist is really important. And I think that is perhaps going to be the way that we are communicating with these machines and understanding them is through art, through storytelling. And we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, you're echoing something that I've heard from, a growing number of dads on this show, which is using technology as an active participant and as a tool for that growth that you describe, right?
Yeah.
And so how amazing at some point for your daughter to be able to go from like, I drew a picture to maybe this thing can be produced physically now, this picture that I made. What a cool concept.
AI is going to make it so that you can have an idea and you can make a real version of it literally in an hour or less, right? And it's going to come up with the marketing plan, and it's going to know where to distribute, and it's going to make the connections, and your AI agents. It's going to be such an incredibly explosive time of creation. And so then my question is, what is that world going to be like to live in, right? That's where my fear is just being overwhelmed by all the great products and ideas and apps. It's like, how are we going to be able to consume all of that?
Yeah.
If I succeed in this parenting thing and launching them, I really hope to launch them into being little entrepreneurs themselves.
That's awesome. On the flip side, what would you say is a mistake that you made as a dad?
I've made several. So I think the biggest one that I have the most regret about, honestly, it's interesting to admit this in a public setting, but I like to live my life openly. I think it's this memory I have of when my son was 3. He was like deeply into that 3-year-old energy of feeling the frustration of the world not conforming to your wishes and then not being sure what to do with that energy and channeling it into aggression and anger. And as his father, it was pretty frightening and overwhelming to experience that. And he would start punching on his sister and punching on me and like being able to produce a fair amount of pain. And so that I knew wasn't going to stand and I didn't know what to do. And so I remember in one of my iterations of I tried holding him so that he couldn't but then that felt like weird, like I was restraining him and it didn't seem to help him at all. He just got worse. And then one day I thought, well, I'll put him in his room. Well, we're in a house with 2 doors on his room, so that didn't really work very well. He just ran out the other door. So whoops, Dad. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe if because I had this notion, maybe from when I was a kid, I don't know, go to your room when you're upset, right? And so I thought, well, maybe I'll just put him in this closet and, maybe that'll calm him down. Well, it calmed him down immediately. And I opened the closet and the look on his face was just like, it was so sad. Like I feel sad even relating that or thinking about that image. He was so sad. And so in that moment, I thought, oh, I'm never doing that again. That's not something that I'm ever going to try. And what I have learned since is that it's really about, I don't want to ever push my kids away or even create separation, right? Because kids they're governed by wanting association with you. That's how they feel safety. So if you're pushing them away and saying, you're now disconnected from the tribe, go, that's the worst feeling in the world. That's like, as an adult, that's torture for a kid. So I try to never do that. But what I do is I help show him ways to use and manipulate that energy in productive ways. And so I try to redirect it. And so what we started doing was I would take him to a different room with me. I'm there with him. And then showing him and doing it myself too, but like punching a pillow, something safe, right? Allowing him to push against me while I hold him, right? And just being okay with that energy being directed at me. And that really helped, honestly. And I think that I would imagine that is helping him learn how to be in relationship with that energy, those emotions that are so strong that honestly will be part of his whole life. And so I want him to have a good relationship with his anger, with his sadness. So yeah, that was
wow,
a mistake in learning.
Yeah. And I mean, thank you for sharing that story. I would imagine it's more common than we might think to have something like that happen. And it sounds like you've learned a good lesson about not trying to quiet the energy, but just redirecting it into a different, more productive place, or allowing it to be there, but away from harm or anything like that.
Yeah, I love it's allowing the energy to be present, but directing it into a place that's more productive and safer for everyone, including it rather than excluding it.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a great thing to end on, a great lesson to end on. So I appreciate you sharing that. How can people follow along or be helpful to you on your journey?
Well, for any of your listeners that are co-parents themselves, you can look me up. I run a podcast called Co-Parenting Beyond Conflict, where we specifically talk about how to cope with and thrive in this sometimes very challenging situation of being a co-parent. So you can look us up on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And also, if you're interested in co-parenting with BestInterest, BestInterest allows you to create peace can be a very difficult situation, using AI as a tool to moderate all communication between co-parents, you can experience peace. So you can look us up on bestinterestapp.com.
Okay. Well, thank you for those. We'll link to both of those places in the show notes. So appreciate you sharing that. Are you ready for our lightning round?
Sure.
No one is ever officially ready for lightning round.
I thought I was off. Shoot. Okay.
Okay. Here we go. What is the most indispensable parenting product that you have ever purchased?
This one's great. So it's a little bug catcher that has a little sliding trap door. And whenever you find a bug in the house, you can go and just take it safely outside. And I think that that is such a great image or a great experience for the kids. Not only do they get to look at the bug because it has a nice magnifying glass in it, they can learn about bugs, but it also teaches them that it's better not to kill things. We love it. Every time we see a bug, get the bug catcher, Dad. There's no panic. It's just like, go do this thing.
That's awesome. What is the most useless parenting product that you've ever purchased?
Earlier in the interview, I was talking about these products that are sold to first-time parents. Honestly, I think it's pretty awful. As a first-time parent, I would highly encourage you, get only used things. Don't buy new stuff. Definitely don't buy technology. Your baby's not going to die. I mean, SIDS is a real thing, absolutely, but not at the level that you're afraid of it right now. Don't buy that fancy $200 sock that'll monitor. It's just going to go in the waste bin. You know, it's like not helpful. So just keep it simple and get all your stuff hand-me-down.
This is the second time probably in a week or two that somebody has said that that baby sock that monitors is a terrible idea. The last person said it's because the baby sock makes you think that your kid is always dying.
I never used the baby sock, but I definitely thought about buying it. And yeah, I now know in hindsight, no, it's not a good use of your time or money.
All right. What is your signature dad's superpower?
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. I think it's my calm, my grounding. I tend to be able to navigate all situations with my kids with like calmness, and I really like to help them redirect that energy.
Now, in your household, are you team swings or team slides?
I love doing things together with my kids. And I think I like slides, and I think my kids really like slides too. We don't have a slide. We have a swing. Swings are cool because you can do it together. I love pushing my kids on a swing. It's just like the best thing. I'll be so sad when they stop asking me to push them on a swing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If your kids had to describe you in a single word, what would it be?
Is it the first word that comes to my head? I don't know. Maybe nice, Daddy? I actually don't know.
Yeah, that checks out. That's probably good. What is your go-to dad wardrobe?
I'm all about efficiency, as you can tell. I love hoodies. I love warmth. And honestly, I've never been fashionable, but I was a little bit more fashionable than now. Now I'm just like, whatever. Just put it on. I don't even care about my hair when I drop off the kids at school. Like, who am I trying to impress? No,
it's all about convenience. Yeah.
Yes.
What is your go-to bribe for good behavior with the kids?
Well, we do this thing here that is actually really cool. It's worked pretty well. So we have a token system, and I have somehow trained them that tokens are the reward and that they can use the tokens for things that they want. And so we have this system that's set up where, you know, if they do something good, like clean their room, then they get a token. And then if they want to do something like watch on the TV, it costs a couple tokens. And so it's like an early introduction to chores. We're starting to adapt the token system to be convertible to money. So there's kind of a mapping to money, and they were able to buy something with tokens. And so there's kind of that going on. But I really like disintermediating reward with like work. I never liked the idea of like, okay, if you do this thing, I'm going to give you this candy. Like, that's just not, and oftentimes the reward doesn't always follow. So I like this idea that they have a duty to clean their room, and that's not always going to map to them watching right after, but they know that when they're building up those tokens, then later they're going to be able to get the reward.
Yeah. Maybe when they're older, you could build a little app for them that they could keep track of their token.
Don't get me started. I'm already
Another
busy,
company.
Adam.
Another
busy.
company. Okay. Speaking of rewards and purchasing things, what is the most absurd thing that one of your kids has ever asked you to buy for them?
Well, okay. It's not exactly absurd, or at least it didn't start that way. My son got a stuffed piggy. I don't know if it was like a gift or I don't really know how it came into our lives, but he loved that stuffed piggy so much. And this would have been probably almost 2 years ago now. Loved it so much that the piggy started going back and forth between the two homes. My kids aren't like big into bringing things back and forth. Somehow that's actually pretty good. It's pretty easy. But this pig would go back and forth in his backpack. And it was like on this order of being a little too big for his backpack. But then I think I may have made the mistake of buying him another piggy. And then that piggy became 3. And suddenly 3 piggies were going back and forth. And that was when Daddy put his foot down, said, no, you can't do that. That's too many piggies for school. So I made the ingenious decision to tell him, okay, I'll buy you 3 new piggies. And then you can keep those 3 piggies at the ones you have at your mom's house and keep 3 piggies at my house. And we're good, right? We're good. You don't have to take them back and forth. He's like, yeah, good. And I thought that was it. So now we have 36 pigs. He's proud to tell you 36 pigs. And it didn't work. They go back and forth. We have pigs everywhere. I don't know what's going on, but that was not a good solution.
You need a separate vehicle just to transport the pigs. It's like moving a football team back and forth.
We have moved pigs in boxes before, yes.
This is the equivalent of my son with penguins. Same thing. Oh. Doesn't have to move them back and forth, but he does like to bring a penguin or 2 on a trip. So.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think it might have something to do with like he feels known by his association with piggies. Obviously, he likes them, but this is like the piggy king of his school. Like all the other kids know that he loves pigs and they barter pigs with him. Like they give them their stuffed pigs that they don't want. Like this guy's he's got piggy game.
Swimming in pigs. He's got real riz when it comes to pigs. So,
yes.
As the kids say. What is your favorite kids movie?
There's a lot of crap out there. I think what I like the best is sitting down with them with Pixar. I think Pixar is pretty much always good. And I love how it's entertaining for me and for them. And it just works for everything. Yeah, that's my go-to.
Okay, all things Pixar. What is the worst experience that you've ever had assembling a kid's toy or a piece of furniture?
Well, my kids are very lucky because they have a dad who is quite handy. My grandfather, actually, growing up, I remember he was so handy and was able to do anything and build anything for me when I was little. And I would always look up to that. And so I love being able to be that for my kids, but also teaching them how to build stuff too and like incorporating that in. I'm not going to do it all for them, but I'm going to teach them how to do it so they can do it with me. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say that I've ever had any struggles with building anything, and I love building things with them and making my own stuff. And yeah.
Awesome. And an amazing rarity in a dad, I find these days. So
really? Oh, that's surprising. It's so fun. It's just wood.
It's just wood. I love that. That's going to be the title of this episode. How long can a piece of food sit on the floor and you will still eat it?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sensitive to my digestion, and I'm actually fairly critical of not eating things that, when in doubt, throw it out.
Okay. All right. I think it's a good rule to live by. Yeah. Okay. 2 more for you. What nostalgic movie can you just not wait to force your kids to watch with you?
Star Wars. We're still waiting on that one.
Yeah.
I think maybe about a year ago, I opened it up a little bit too early, and like there was some fear that I sensed, so we stopped it. But God, I can't wait. Can't wait to show them Star Wars.
Yeah. Now, will you go, so there's 9 of them now. Will you start at the very beginning, or will you go like the original order that they were released? What do you think?
I think original order. Yeah. You got to. I think I'll just pretend like the other ones don't exist and let them discover them on their own. 1, 2, and 3.
Not worth it.
I'll let them disappoint themselves.
Yeah. Okay, finally, only have 2 kids, but you do have a lot of pigs. So what is your take on minivans?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a complicated take. I think that there is a choice you get to make as a parent when choosing cars. You can either be the parent that drives every single kid around everywhere all the time, if you want to do that, get the minivan. If you want to have a little bit more peace and less responsibility and have your kids be driven around, then get the normal 5-seater.
Yeah.
That's what I chose.
Mini Cooper.
Yeah, right. Motorcycle.
All right.
Sidecar.
Right. I love that. Sidecar just for the pigs, actually.
Yes,
So,
that's right.
Okay. Well, Saul, it has been my absolute pleasure having you on Startup Dad today. Thank you so much for joining me, and best of luck to you, your family, and your burgeoning app, BestInterest. I'll have to go check it out.
Thank you, Adam. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to today's conversation with Saul Kennedy. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, share, and leave me a review on Apple or Spotify. It'll help other people find this podcast. Startup Dad has a YouTube channel. You can find it by searching Startup Dad Pod on YouTube. If you're a startup founder, leader, or just want to get better at your job in tech as a growth practitioner, product manager, or executive, you can join a community of over 11,000 subscribers and stay up to date on my thoughts on growth and product by subscribing to the Fishman AF newsletter at www.fishmanafnewsletter.com. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.